It is with a heavy heart and the utmost sadness that I officially announce my retirement.
Now, wrestling is supposed to make fans feel all sorts of emotions, from anger and disappointment to utter heartbreak and sadness. Over the years, there have been several moments on WWE programming that have left fans with a tear in their eye. Now, the majority of these moments on this list are very much real, and there were moments where fans were ripped away from the escapism of wrestling into the harsh reality of life. But which moments were they? Well, join us now as WrestleMania looks at 10 of the most heartbreaking moments in WWE history. As always, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos, and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Number 1. The streak ends. WrestleMania 30 was a special night for a number of reasons. It featured Daniel Bryan overcoming the Authority in the main event to win the world title, and it also featured the end of the greatest win streak in WWE history. Now, that streak in question was The Undertaker's unbeaten streak for 21 matches at WrestleMania. It had become legendary and somewhat bigger than WrestleMania itself. Therefore, when they decided that WrestleMania 30 was the night that The Undertaker was finally going to lose the streak to Brock Lesnar of all people, fans were no doubt shocked. Now, the match wasn't the best of either man's career, mainly thanks to The Undertaker being knocked out early on in the match and being unable to remember certain spots in it. However, after numerous F5s, the match was over and the match finished with utter silence, as fans were shocked that the WWE had finally decided to end the dead man streak. After a few minutes of awkward silence, The Undertaker rose to his feet and fans' hearts began to break as The Undertaker looked completely devastated. The camera cut to fans at ringside in tears who looked like they had their hearts removed from their chests. Even sadder could have been the aftermath, especially this sign that was found on the sidewalk in New Orleans after the event. Obviously, this fan was upset that the streak was finally broken. It wasn't 22-0, it was 21-1. Even with Taker still in the ring, there was a photo that was captured backstage of Brock Lesnar watching on The Undertaker, where he was visibly upset, probably at the thought of he being honored with breaking the streak. If you don't even know how special The Undertaker is to Vince McMahon. Number 2. Finn Balor surrenders the Universal title. When the WWE executed a brand split in the summer of 2016, the WWE title went to SmackDown, and this meant that Raw was without a world title. Thus, they created the Universal title, a title that was met with extremely negative reviews, as it was literally the WWE Championship spray-painted red. Now, although the reception to the design of the title was extremely bad, the match to decide the title certainly wasn't. A match was decided to crown the inaugural champion, and it was between Finn Balor and Seth Rollins in SummerSlam's main event. Balor would win the match and would be chosen as the new face of Raw to carry the brand into the future. The problem was that Balor was injured during a powerbomb into the barricade spot and ultimately tore his labrum. Balor finished the match, but on the next night on Raw, he was forced to surrender his newly won Universal title in a heartbreaking segment where it looked like Balor was about to break down and cry at any passing moment. Number 3. Ric Flair's retirement segment. In 2018, the WWE ran a storyline involving Ric Flair, and it would ultimately lead to a match with the stipulation that if Flair was to lose this match, he would be forced to retire forever. Now, this match would happen at WrestleMania 24 when Flair would lose to Shawn Michaels in a fantastic match.
Michaels will it be? And yes!
The closing moments of the match with HBK declaring "I'm sorry, I love you" before kicking Flair's head off was emotional enough, but it was the following night on Raw that truly broke fans' hearts. The segment involved Flair coming out to do a goodbye promo, yet he would be interrupted by Triple H, who told Flair that he wasn't the only one who wanted to say goodbye. What followed was 20 minutes of WWE legends and Flair's family all coming down to the ring to say goodbye. At the end of the segment, virtually the entire WWE roster, including The Undertaker, applauded the wrestling legend. Number 4. Jerry Lawler has a heart attack live on Raw. One of the scariest and realest moments in WWE history took place on the 10th September 2012 edition of Raw. During a tag match on Raw, Jerry Lawler began to have a heart attack on commentary and needed immediate medical assistance to save his life. Naturally, this sent every person watching in the arena in a state of panic, as it looked like the wrestling legend had almost passed away.
Jerry passed out here at ringside.
Michael Cole offered some context to the incident during an appearance on Busted Open Radio, and he stated, "I looked over to Jerry to my left, and Jerry was laying down on the table, his head was down, and he was literally snoring. At that point, I thought this obviously isn't good, he looked blue. So I jumped up, first thing I did, and I'll never forget this, is I hit my mute switch on my box because I was screaming for the doctor. Luckily, we had Doc Sampson at ringside, so I'm screaming for the doctor, 'Doc, Doc, Jerry needs you,' and I hit the mute switch I think out of instinct." Cole then had the tough task of telling the audience what had occurred. The way Cole conducted himself was praised by fans and WWE officials as he acted with nothing but class and dignity, and although the moment was indeed heartbreaking, Cole managed to reassure everyone that Lawler would be absolutely fine, and luckily he was. Number 5. Daniel Bryan retires. The 2016 retirement of Daniel Bryan hit fans so hard. Bryan had become one of the most organically over wrestlers in the history of WWE, so when he was forced to retire due to neck and concussion related issues, it truly impacted a lot of fans. Bryan would retire on the February 8th, 2016 edition of Raw, and he would come down to the ring and express his gratitude towards the fans and fellow superstars. Bryan stated, "Grateful. I am very grateful. I'm very grateful because wrestling doesn't owe me or anybody back there. It doesn't owe us anything. WWE doesn't owe us anything. Nobody owes. You guys don't owe us anything. We do this because we love to do this." And then it was strange because I did this because I love to do this, and then all of a sudden you guys just got behind me in a way that I never thought was possible. In a way that fans shouldn't necessarily get behind a guy who is 5'8" and 190 pounds. You guys got behind me in a way that made me feel that I was more than just me, and for that, I'm grateful. Bryan and the fans broke down during the speech, and it was truly a tough watch. Luckily, 2 years later, Bryan would finally get cleared to compete once again and is wrestling to this very day. Number 6. The Shield disband. In 2014, WWE positioned The Shield as their top babyfaces in WWE. They would feud with Evolution and would win back-to-back pay-per-view matches against the legendary stable. However, a segment WWE booked on Raw following Payback 2014 shocked the wrestling world. The Shield would be in the ring and Triple H and Randy Orton would come onto the ramp. Triple H would declare that there's always a plan B, and this led to Rollins turning on Reigns and Ambrose and beating them down with a steel chair.
Oh my God!
Nobody saw the breakup coming, and it certainly was a heartbreaking moment for the fans of the iconic trio. Number 7. Edge's retirement. The 2011 retirement of Edge was really difficult to process for a lot of fans. Edge was someone who had been a star through the Attitude Era and Ruthless Aggression Era and PG Era, meaning fans had built up a natural connection with the multi-time world champion. But on the 11th April 2011 episode of Raw, Edge came to the ring and delivered an emotional, heartbreaking promo reflecting on his career and the impact that wrestling had on his body. Edge revealed he had been feeling numbness in his arms and he managed to pass basic test strengths prior to WrestleMania, but needed an MRI, and it sadly forced him into retirement. The doctors ruled that if Edge took another bump, he may be paralyzed or could even die. This obviously was tough to watch and hard to process for a lot of fans. Now, the good news was that over a decade later, he managed to get the all clear and is embarking on a second WWE run where he can retire on his own terms. Number 8. Raw is Owen. Owen Hart's tragic passing at Over the Edge 99 was one of the darkest days in WWE history. WWE's tribute to the legendary talent took place on the following episode of Raw, and the show would be titled Raw is Owen. It would be a 2-hour show dedicated to the life and career of one of the most popular wrestlers in WWE. Before the show, all storylines were put aside and all wrestlers were given the option of having the night off. The show started with the entire roster on the ramp for a 10-bell salute, which was then followed by a video package highlighting Owen Hart's career. The show featured several wrestlers paying tribute and sharing emotional stories about what an amazing human being Owen was. The close of the show featured Stone Cold toasting a beer to an image of Owen and leaving a beer in the ring in a beautiful and fitting tribute to a wrestling icon. Number 9. Roman Reigns' leukemia announcement. On the October 22nd, 2018 edition of Raw, Roman Reigns came to the ring and delivered a promo. However, this wasn't a typical Reigns promo, as he announced to the audience that his leukemia had returned after 11 years of it being in remission. The stunned silence in the audience spoke volumes as fans were devastated for the reigning Universal Champion. Reigns was forced to give up the title and will be out of action for around 5 months, but luckily Reigns managed to once again win the battle, and on the February 25th, 2019 edition of Raw, Reigns announced that the leukemia was now back in remission. And number 10, the Eddie Guerrero Tribute Show. The death of Eddie Guerrero in November 2005 shook the wrestling world to its core. Eddie was one of the most gifted wrestlers of all time, and his passing still affects people to this very day. To pay tribute to Eddie, WWE booked 2 tribute shows the week following his passing, one for Raw and one for SmackDown. Both shows featured stories from talents about the life and times of Eddie, as well as matches which paid tribute to the talents of Latino Heat. The 2 shows were tough to watch, with numerous talents breaking down during the 10-bell salute and during their own personal tribute to the former WWE Champion. But there you have it, guys, 10 of the most heartbreaking moments in WWE history. Be sure to leave your comments down below, subscribe if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram and Facebook for exclusive lists, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.